Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Produced by Barber and StarFox Radio. Hartman, you stay with me. Prevo, Barber, check the perimeter, but keep it down. Remember, Foxton has us here for observational purposes only. HQ wants to know what the Japanese are doing in this area. Heads up, enemies incoming. Holy, look at the size of those crocodiles. Oh no. Bravo, and grab Barber. Hartman, let's go. We got enough intel right now to understand what's going on right here. I can't believe they ran back into the jungle with all those crocodiles. My creatures of the night, welcome back. Yes, it is not Midnight Lycanthropy, but very close. It's Camp Nightmare Fuel, my little sister podcast that, of course, Barb Hartman, as well as myself, aka LordeStarfox, created with some nightmares. We also have somebody you should recognize the name that we have found along the darkness of the trail and brought him to be one of our minions as well. I am referring to Mr. Barber, Bigfoot's Barber Shop. And then we do have one of my residential scientists over on, of course, Midnight Lycanthropy, Robert Prevo from Monstrous the Podcast. Great stuff we do have coming up tonight. We are going to be diving into saltwater crocodiles. Yes, aka the salties. That is some pure nightmare fuel. The latter part of the episode, we are going to be talking about Ramree Island. Yet previous to that, we have some more salty information, no pun intended, to get the good old nightmares flowing. Well, Miss Hartman and, of course, Robert Prevo and Mr. Barber, my friends, are we ready to dive into the madness that Mr. Barber is going to start this podcast off with?
Yeah, let's go.
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Let's go. Tonight's star of the show, in one way, we're going to be talking about is actually true nightmare camp fuel because of the fact that they are real. We are on their menu, and what we are talking about are crocodiles. And thanks to Steve Irwin, the saltwater crocodile seems to get the most attention and most love these days. Yet the Nile crocodile is, as Steve Irwin would say, the naughty one of the bunch, because Nile crocodiles tend to eat somewhere between 300 and 500 people in Africa a year. Just the Nile alone, there's an estimated 1,000 people who get munched on but believe it or not, Niles are the culprit of most of them. But the salties are the biggest. The salties are the baddest. It's just the salties probably don't get the same opportunities that the Niles do, as for the fact of population distribution, Australia compared to Southern Africa. And more than likely, a lot more Nile crocodile attacks happen and don't get reported because of the lack of the technology. So it could be very well be double or triple what you were looking at as far as what the Nile crocodile is capable of. But they do get big, and that's why we are on the menu. You know, saltwater crocodiles, which were on the brink of extinction at one point, but due to conservation efforts to stop the hunting for hide hunting, they come back over 1 million strong, and they're still protected. Along with them being protected comes the obstacle of now we're back on the menu. So there is a balance of which ones to keep and which ones to capture. And if they're lucky, they get put into a zoo, kind of like the world's longest crocodile, who was long and held the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest saltwater crocodile known, over 20 feet, 20 feet, 3 inches. And he was a big boy. He ate well. You know, he was roughly 100 years old, and he got to be 2,370 pounds. But those crocs, yes, and they are the star part of the show. Now, are they responsible for everything? I guess we'll get the story started and find out.
I just think that this is complete like nightmare fuel because they're so huge and scary. Yeah, interesting, but definitely terrifying to me. I'd rather see a Bigfoot. I'd rather go in the woods with a Bigfoot.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you're looking at the crocodilians, especially the saltwater and the Nile croc, yeah, you're definitely looking at nightmare fuel. A lot of people are thinking, well, I don't want to go in the water with sharks, and that's definitely true. Crocodilians, though, I mean, we've all grown up watching the nature shows where the crocodiles do that roll. And unfortunately, any animal they get a hold of tends to end up in pieces. So the saltwater crocodilian, or saltwater croc, Crocodilius porosus, is the biggest. I mean, you're talking about weighing in at 2,000 pounds. That's roughly a ton. With a length of around 20 feet, although others much larger have been spotted or are estimated to be out there. I think one of the largest ones was supposed to be in the Philippines at one time, and I can't remember the name of that crocodile specifically. I do remember seeing footage of one that they had captured and trying to put it on basically what looked like a wheelbarrow and roll this thing around, but it was pretty devastating. Crocodilians are known as apex predators. They're very fast on land as well as in the water. You're not going to outswim a crocodile. You're probably not going to outrun one at a short distance. Even the alligator, the American alligator, which I've had some hands-on experience with a little bit. Yeah, they're quite formidable whenever you see them up close. You're talking about basically a living dinosaur that we're still dealing with. So it's kind of, crocodile's a crocodile. I don't really know where to go with it. When you look at the crocodilians, they're everywhere. We've got them in we got them in South America. We've got them in North America. Saltwater crocs are pretty much everywhere there's salt water and the right temperature. They're monsters for sure.
Yeah, crocs have that ability like snakes where they'll continue to grow as long as they live. They have that indeterminate growth factor. And the one you were talking about where there's the video footage of the one rolling and destroying that cart is Long. They made a couple of different episodes in the capture of that. And there was the rumor and numerous sightings of Long because it was in a New Guinea village. There were over 140 some people missing that they were attributing to Long. But there were also other sightings where they saw 2 saltwater crocs in the river while they were standing on the bridge. One was Long, but there was one who was almost 50% bigger. So if Long was 20 feet, there was one that was supposed to be 30 feet. When they captured Long, they emptied his tummy for him and didn't find any remains. Now, does that mean he wasn't part of the other 100+ attacks? No. So they can come out of nowhere, and you're talking 2/3 of the body can come out of water. In the Long's case, you're talking 12.5, 13 feet, roughly. So that's a pretty easy snatch from a boat when you think about it, when you can't even see it to begin with.
Preach right there by everybody. We're pretty much dealing with dinosaurs that have not changed since the beginning of their reign. They don't need to. It's funny because people think we're so intellectual. Well, guess what? They are so smart and they are so successful. They don't need to change. If they aren't intellectual, why is it you cannot camp in the same sites daily in areas with salties? Why? Because they memorize at what points in time, whether it's to bathe, collect water, doesn't matter. Bang, ambush. Seems pretty smart to me right there. All water crocodiles have no fear of great white sharks or anything else. They have been seen very far out at ocean, just gliding along with the current. They are also the only crocodile species and alligator species that has developed these saltwater glands that allow them to spend no matter how much time they want in salt water. There's also a video out there of these two enormous saltwater crocodiles where these bozos are pretty much teasing them with, chicken and things off the side of the boat. Another discussion at a point in time, a lot of scientists, including people that I work with, think that behaviorisms such as this or chumming of the water with sharks really associates people with food. Also, you're causing these predators to come in, be ticked off that their food source isn't there, that you just have these little hairless monkeys, as Mr. Barber would say, teasing them as if we can't get more gnarly.
Well, I think that's, it's definitely true. You made really good points. And another thing that we need to keep in mind is like saltwater crocs. We have this idea simply because of their name that they're only going to be found in the ocean. Well, they will go up rivers. They will get into lakes that are freshwater. They'll, you can find them pretty much anywhere that you would find like an American alligator or something like that. If you get into the Everglades, saltwater crocs will get up into the Everglades, definitely, which is, has some salinity to it anyway. Very, very, very dangerous animal. They should never be underestimated. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. Their intelligence is way underestimated. I mean, they know when certain fish runs are at times of the years, when they go inland to the rivers, when certain fish are running. As Kenny said, they develop patterns. They know when somebody's coming to the water, what time of day, and when would be the best time to give them a good morning. So way underestimated and should just be left alone. What would you think, Barb? You ready to pet one yet?
No, absolutely not. Never. Never, never, never. I mean, they're cool to see, like from, I don't know, behind glass, or I don't, like some fence, but they're so fast. They can be so vicious, and yeah. I can't watch those videos. It's just, oof. Oh. That's really all I have to say. Talk about nightmare fuel. Good. This is a good one.
Yeah, the fact that they are so primal, they haven't had to change in a million years because they're just about the perfect design by nature. They're just an eating machine, and eating seems to come first for them. So the fact that they have survived millions of years without needing to really change at all speaks to the perfection that nature gave them. I mean, you're talking 20 feet long with 5,000 pounds of jaw pressure. Just takes chunks off. There's nothing beautiful except, depending on who you are, is their appearance. How they feed is definitely not for the weak.
Yeah, straight up nightmare fuel, of course. Here's a little bit more nightmare fuel for you. We're not even going to outrun these things on land. Short bursts, they can run up to 18, potentially 20 miles per hour. Yeah, good luck with that. Swimming wise, same thing. They can swim up to 20 miles per hour. And recently, there was a story from Australia of a gentleman that was a hunter and outdoorsman in this area of Australia. There had never been a report of a crocodile. He had always bathed and cooled off in this little stream that was around his knees, maybe up to his waist. Well, he never comes home. His friends say, what the heck? He was in this area. They find some of his belongings. He was attacked by an enormous saltwater crocodile that was seen in this area. All his friends said he was so meticulous with how he handled things. Doesn't matter. I mean, when you just take that 1 second off and let your guard down, you're in a lot of trouble right there. Pretty gnarly. And now, are all y'all ready to finish off this episode with one of the most terrifying, verified, real-life events of all time?
Absolutely.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's hear it.
This is called the Ramree Island saltwater crocodile attack. This refers to a
World War II incident
where saltwater crocodiles in the mangrove swamps of Ramree Island, Burma, allegedly disposed of a very large number of retreating Japanese soldiers. While the Guinness Book of Records once listed this event as
the greatest and largest attack on humans ever.
Many historians and experts now still are not sure the exact number of these Japanese soldiers that were allegedly preyed upon by these saltwater crocodiles. This occurred in the 1945 during the Burma campaign. British and Indian forces invaded Ramree Island. As the Allied forces are advancing, you have hundreds of Japanese soldiers that were forced into the island's mangrove swamps. The estimated amount of these Japanese soldiers were in the thousands. Hundreds of these Japanese soldiers now split up, and some decided they were going to, instead of surrendering to the Allies, take their luck back into this area of highly concentrated saltwater crocodiles in the world. These swamps are heavily populated by, yes, large man-eating saltwater crocodiles. This is where some of the disputes come in. The story, largely attributed to Officer Bruce Wright, claims around 1,000 Japanese soldiers retreated in the direction of the mangrove swamp. As these men entered the swamps, supposedly all throughout the night,
The Allied soldiers
could hear the screams as well as the hissing, splashing of large crocodiles attacking. You could hear gunshots going off. The Allies said it was absolutely terrifying. Only about 20 of the 1,000 that had retreated in there came out of this horror story. The rest of their Japanese companions were attacked by these monsters. Some sources now believe this account could be exaggerated. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's a common theme. The survival rate of the Japanese soldiers was much likely a little bit higher than what is being presented to us. And also, some of these soldiers probably succumbed to insects or misfortune, dehydration, etc. The Guinness World Records still includes this account. It's a pretty huge stamp of approval right there, because you have that ship that went down, the U.S. Indianapolis. For days, you had all these sharks that were attacking a lot of people. And this is even more messed up than that. We still, to this day, do not know the exact amount of Japanese soldiers attacked by these man-eaters. Well, that's pretty much the account right here of Ramree Island.
Yes, I am interested to, if any of you guys know the answer to this, how many of these crocodiles typically are in the water in this area? Because if 900, 1,000 men go in, and then 20 Was it 20? Were there any survivors?
Yeah, there was supposedly about 20 people that
Okay,
came
that's what
back out.
okay, yeah. Because I know that I thought that, but then another thing said that there was 20 that were confirmed eaten by crocodiles. And then the other, like you were saying, LordeStarfox could have been, succumbed to dehydration, other injuries. But I just think that's a lot of men that to be unalived. How many crocodiles are in there at that time? Regardless, it's still a huge, it's a huge nightmare to think that these guys, well, whatever, they go in there and that's all they could do is go in there and meet their fate. But do any of you guys know that, like, typically how many crocodiles would be in that area?
It would have to be an amazing number of crocodiles in there. If 1,000 men went in, and you have to think crocodiles are going to eat until they're satiated. So 1,000 guys go in, 20 men come out. Man, you're looking at what club? I mean, you're getting close to 1,000 crocodiles that would have to be in the area. So it's that's going to be a big number. I mean, so if you look at I think it was written by Bruce Wright. Kenny basically said this exact same thing. On the night of February 19th, 1945 was the most horrible that any member of the crew ever experienced. The scattered rifle shots in the pitch black swamp, punctured by the screams of wounded men, crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles, and the blurred, whirring sound of spinning crocodiles. At dawn, the vultures arrived to clean up what the crocodiles had left. Of about 1,000 Japanese soldiers that entered the swamps of Ramree, only about 20 were found alive. And I know that these 20 that were found alive, basically they were given up. They were coming in, carrying basically carrying each other wounded back in, just to the British forces, and saying that's it, we give up. So that's a lot of crocodiles that you're dealing with in that area. Plus, like Kenny said, there's probably other things that were happening in that area as well.
I actually have an answer for both of you. There is no current number for how many saltwater crocodiles live on Ramree Island. The reason is there is no capability of a successful comprehensive survey. This region isn't necessarily an area where it would be easy for biologists and geologists, etc., any sort of scientific mind to get in there and give us a proper analysis. There is, though, concern that beginning in the 1980s, their population took a massive dip, and now it's going to be scattered individuals that remain. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get a good account of how many could have been there. I watched Nat Geo. We're talking about Nile crocodiles, but man, hasn't anybody seen where there's like 30 of those things in the water at the same point in time, right? And you got all these antelope and things trying to run across. I don't know. Is it really that far-fetched to have 30 saltwater crocodiles in there that could have done some serious damage and just gone into frenzy mode? Meaning, sure, Tax Prevo disposes of him, but now I'm like, oh, there's Barber over there. And they go after Mr. Barber. Then they're just going frantic, kind of like a fox in a chicken coop, right?
I don't think you get that with crocs. Once they get something, they hold on to it due to the lack of available prey. So, if you want to put it, that he grabs Prevo and then sees me, I'm going to keep Prevo because that's guaranteed. I'm not going to drop him for a maybe.
Exactly. So, I mean, what's going to happen is if you got that many crocs in an area, just like you're talking about with the Nile crocs, and say there's a zebra herd that's trying to go across, as soon as one is picked off and pulled back, 2 or 3 other crocs see this opportunity and they come in and they start working on the same zebra. So, once you've got one pulled out from the herd, you've got like 30 that might make it across, where these other crocodiles are working on this one, or they may start to try and pick off another one, but usually it's whatever's going to be the easiest, and that's what I'm going to work with.
Why do you think sharks will go into the frenzies, and a lot of mammals like wolves, why do they just go into like a psychotic frenzy, do you think?
Well, if we're looking at sharks, not really sure. We think it has to do with the blood in the water. We've overestimated how well that sharks can pick up blood in the water. A drop of blood, they can, sense it from, you've heard like 20 miles away. Well, it's not really the case. It's not really that far. But as far as going into a feeding frenzy, well, once you see blood in the water and you know that something's injured, as a predator like a shark, you're going to start going and attacking. They'll even attack one another, just like you were talking about with the crocodiles, the one crocodile biting the other one's arm off. And you will see that with wolves as well. It's just, that's a pack mentality too. Crocodiles aren't necessarily, well, they're definitely not pack animals. They just happen to all be in the same area. If there's a lack of food in the area, they will turn on one another and start picking each other off. The smaller ones, definitely. So it's just a matter of, there's the level of hunger, the availability of food, and what resources I have to spend as a predator to take out that food. So if you've already got one crocodile who has successfully gotten a hold of something, that's easy. I'm going to come in there and it's easier to take from the other croc bits and pieces than it is to try and go and risk grabbing a hold of another live animal that could potentially injure me.
Right. And as far as like foxes and big cats and bears go, if you really think about it, what's the one thing they tell you not to do when you suspect you're being stalked? Is don't move. So maybe once you take one down, they catch the movement, so they go after the movement because it's moving. Just similar to other things, they just grab it because it's moving. They don't even necessarily want it, but now they're all hyped up. So the movement catches them, so they're drawn to the movement, drop it. What's in their mouth no longer moves, so they're going to find the next one that moves.
Yeah, you're right. The opportunity is there. Let's take advantage of it. Let's deal with this because we don't know when we're going to get to eat again.
So I wonder if that was the case. One has, let's say these crocodiles are in this area. They've never had 900 men just jump in the water at once. So, how could we really gauge their behavior if that's not something that typically, or do you guys think that this behavior has been proven by, well, like you were saying, like if a herd of zebras go in, or that they could have been almost, they were shocked, like, whoa, what's going on? What is all this?
That's a great question as well. Meaning, yeah, something could also be a defensive attack. I'm not really sure how crocodiles act in that mannerism. I also know that this had to have happened potentially in this area before with indigenous people. Obviously, if we know saltwater crocodiles are there, we all don't need to be geniuses to realize that has to have been some indigenous people, just like still to this day, well, probably were a little bit more fearless than they should have and waded out into this water up to their waist. And well, it didn't end too well. I do know, even though salties and such were our main conversation tonight, I do know that with Nile crocodiles, unfortunately, with a lot of the terrible things that have gone on in Africa, when enemies were disposing of their enemies, they would just toss them into the rivers. These crocodiles now have a custom taste for what was presented to them. It's kind of like with anything else. They say once something has a taste for human blood, it's a troublesome animal now, even if it's a domesticated dog, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Another thing you want to take into account with the Battle of Ramree Island is what was the natural ecosystem that was going on before the battle, and how much did the battle disrupt that flow of food, natural, food sources to the crocodiles that were there. Were we at a point where the crocodiles were actually starving? And then whenever the Japanese ran into the swamps and, the glades and all this other stuff, the crocodiles were at that point where they're like, man, I'm going to eat anything and everything I can get my hands on, or my jaws on in this case. So yeah, was there a push to actually accidentally get these crocodiles to where they were so starving that they were attacking just anything and everything that would come out there, because the battle that had been going on had disrupted the natural flow of food in that area previously? So that's something you might want to take into account too in looking at this.
Well, another thing to take into account, and I'll run with Kenny's point of indigenous people. Indigenous people learned how to deal with them, knew where they were at, knew how to avoid them. With thousands of people running into an ecosystem they know nothing about, that's like taking Kenny and putting him down in the Amazon or in the Congo, saying, here you go. You know, there's going to be rainbow croc poo somewhere, probably. But, you know, and the other thing is, it wasn't just Japanese and crocs on the island. You got the Allied forces taking aim at these people and probably dropping them too. So, and there's already holes in the story as far as the shots and hissing. If a croc's going to hunt you, he's not going to hiss at you first. That's a warning. That's stay back. So hearing the hissing means, yeah, they heard some warnings, but you know, well, and unfortunately too, if a 15-foot croc decides just to give you a warning bite, that's probably sufficient enough to take you out of the race anyway. But you know, you have poisonous snakes on the island. Again, you have no concept of what this kind of environment is. So, I mean, everybody puts the world Guinness Book of World Records on kind of a pedestal, but if you really look deep in some of their records, they are flawed, which used to be pretty strict, has kind of, you know, slipped along the ages. So I just don't think it happened where the crocs got everybody. I think Allied forces took a few, snakes took a few, people tripping and breaking a leg in the water and things like that.
Love it, man. Just preach, everybody, right there. You know, you can always find everybody in the playlist down below. You can find them under the Midnight Society down below.
Well, I'll give my thoughts on this. I agree with you, Brian. There's so many other things, and you guys had mentioned them all. If the water is deep, and you're and think about 900 guys like going into the water at one time, there's going to be people that are trampled and and what have you. So I think that was, but anyway, just the thought, the whole situation is it's terrifying.
Yeah, I think you have to take into account the fog of war, which was going on right then. So you had the enemy retreating into the jungles, into the swamps. The count probably was exaggerated as far as there being 1,000 men that went in. And as far as only 20 came back out, that may have also been exaggerated. As stories are told over and over, the fish gets bigger, and the in this case the fish being the number of people that were taken out. So I think the story was probably exaggerated, and just like Brian said, the Guinness Book of World Records is not the best at factuality anymore, like they used to be. So yeah, my take on the story is it's exaggerated into being more like urban lore than anything else.
I do love all three of you and everybody that stops by and hangs out with us here. Everybody that tunes in, thank you very much. Please let everybody know where they can find you. After that, this will be the conclusion of the meeting of the Midnight Society on Camp Nightmare Fuel.
I'll go first. My name is Barb Hartman, and No Drama, Bigfoot and Cryptids. I have a very safe space page if you have any questions, or you want to submit evidence. But I would love to have you check out my evidence. That's my shameless plug.
I am in with my group, Monstrous, which we get together and we talk about all things, paranormal, cryptozoological, UFO-based mysteries, all that fun stuff. So if you get a kick out of doing that and you want to hang out and, talk with us, we're more than happy to have you there. We love having everybody there. Through the podcast, we've got just Monstrous, the podcast where I talk to fantastic people like Brian, like Kenny, like Barb, and a lot of other people. We also do the Cryptid Field Guide. And we just started Monstrous Lore. The first episode, which is out, has to do with Mel's Holt, which we covered here. So thanks again for having me on. And Brian, I'm going to hand it over to you, buddy.
Thank you, my friend. Mine's short and sweet. You can find me on the Bigfoot Outlaw Network on YouTube, and you can also find me on Bigfoot's Barbershop that coincides with Outlaw Bigfoot on streams. Not very active on it at the moment, but things may change.